Hello, everyone, and welcome to TEP Talks Professional Series, a groundbreaking new podcast dedicated to showcasing the diverse career journey and professional accomplishments of TEP alumni, brought to you by the TEP Foundation. I am your host, Stan Silverman, URI Class of 79, Tau Omega 402. It's my privilege to speak to TEP brothers across a wide spectrum of industries, gaining insights into their fields, advice for breaking in, and a realistic look at the day-to-day work behind some of the most impactful careers in the modern economy. Personally, I found so many of the brothers with whom I spoke to have such interesting stories. I'm sure that in addition to the educational benefit that you will gain from watching and listening to these professionals, the stories that they tell are just plain fascinating. So pick one, anyone, or pick them all. I'm certain that it'll be worth your while. Thank you and happy watching. Hello, everyone. Today, I have the good fortune to be interviewing Fred Romero, Queens College, class of 97. Fred is the CEO of a nonprofit in New York City. So, without further ado, here we go. Hi, how are you?
Good, good. How you doing?
Good, very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you also.
Thank you. What year did you graduate college?
I graduated in 97. I was in the 6-year plan.
And that was Queens?
Yeah, Queens College, yeah.
Okay. Were you there when Mark was there?
Yes, actually, I think Mark was um third or fourth semester in before I came along.
So,
Yeah.
what do you do for a living?
So I am a CEO for a New York City nonprofit. And
Okay.
we provide services for people with developmental disabilities across New York City and 4 of the 5 boroughs. We never actually ventured into Staten Island, but we do Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, Manhattan. And the organization has actually been around since 1988. I've been with the organization since 94. Technically 93, but actually yeah, mostly 94. 93, I started in late October, and so I can't really count 93. And I held various positions in the company. And I guess when I was a CFO of the company in 2013, the board of directors decided they wanted to go a different direction with the CEO at the time, and so they put me in as interim CEO with the COO at the time. So we were co-CEOs for about 6 months, and then I was offered the top job by the board of directors. So that was in 2013.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an accounting background?
My so I have so it's funny. I actually started when I graduated from Queens College. I graduated with a degree in psychology, and then I thought that my future was going to be psychology, and so my best path towards private practice was going to be for me. I thought at the time to go into social work, and through there I can get my licensing, and then I can get my credentials, and with a little doing internship with a psychologist, I would be off to the races, and I would have my own private practice. And so I went to Columbia University for my master's program, and did really wonderful. I liked it a lot. I actually did evaluations for AHRC in New York City, which is a very, very large nonprofit that serves people with disabilities. And I was doing the psychosocial evaluations for them, and I was actually one of the top evaluators in the city because I was going into neighborhoods that nobody else really wanted to go to get evaluations done for the people that were like the neediest of folks that had no access, to services, and for them to get to New York City to go and see clinicians in New York City was just not going to be in the cards. And so I would venture out into the sketchiest neighborhoods in the Bronx, the South Bronx, and I would go and I would meet with the parents and I would do the evaluations on these kids. And this was their entry point into receiving services with special ed and the that whole um, ecosystem, and did that for some years. Obviously, while I was doing work with in the organization that I've been with since 1993, that I was doing that I was doing uh, program work. So during the day, I was doing the program work, with people with disabilities, and in the evenings and weekends, I was going out and seeing people and doing evaluations. And I did that for a great number of years. And I went through this period of burnout where it's like, I don't know if this is what I really want to do. I was doing very well. I was making very good money, and I was helping out a lot of people, and I made a lot of connections. And because I was always out in the field, and I made myself highly accessible to people because I was a hustler. I was a hustler. I was really trying to, trying to make ends meet. I had just gotten married, just bought a house on Long Island, trying to keep up with the Joneses and pay property taxes, and you know, um, the summer trips to Disney World with the kids and stuff. So it was work, 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 and then weekends with the family, and I wouldn't get home till 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I did that for a number of years, and I went through a burnout period, and an opportunity had presented itself where we had an outgoing CFO, and then we had a CFO. It wasn't a CFO; it was a controller, and she was on her way out, and we had hired a an interim controller, kind of like a consultant, to kind of review the books and see, if everything was being done accurately, that sort of stuff. And I can imagine for a controller, when she's kind of getting, I'm not going to say she was getting pushed out, but there was a lot of pressure there for her to produce. Bringing in a consultant probably made it very, very difficult for her. It's kind of like you feel like somebody's over your shoulder, and so
Mm.
um, I had I was running this program, and she had asked for my assistance, and trying to figure out the budget for my program because I was the one that was working in the program. I was the one spending the money in the program. I was the one hiring the people and firing the people. And so I had a gauge of like what the expenses were for the program. And this was all projections, right? Because this is like, because obviously she's an accountant, and everything in accounting is historical account. But she wanted to get projections for the board of directors and for the CEO, and so she wanted to gauge for me what my spend is going to be like for next year. And so she just gave me a bunch of spreadsheets to work on based on her chart of accounts for my program, and I fell into this zone. It was almost hypnotic, and I was sitting there looking at Excel spreadsheets, and I was just like, it's like I discovered something that I thought my entire life I hated, and that was math. Right? I hated math, and I hated numbers. This is what you go into the psychology sciences. You go into some pseudo sciences. You go into all these different sciences to avoid the chemistry, the biology, right? The physics,
Hard
and
science.
yeah, the hard sciences, right? And I'm there, and I'm like, at this point I'm like maybe 32 years old, and married with kids and everything, and I'm I'm loving what I'm doing, and I'm asking her for more tasks related to accounting, and she was more than happy to give me stuff, some of her work, because she was already under a lot of pressure.
You
Um,
do it.
yeah, exactly. And I was reconciling stuff without understanding the background behind the reconciliation of things, and um, I think the CEO kind of noticed that I was doing that, and he was asking me how the books are looking, and I'm like thinking to myself, I'm like, well, I'm not a spy or anything. I'm not going to be like undermining anybody's job, but I certainly don't want to say that I don't like it because and I certainly want to make sure I'm getting my day job done because I don't want him telling me, well, you really shouldn't be working on this. You got other work to do. Yeah, especially if he doesn't want her to have anyone else's help, right? So um, but then I went into his office, the CEO's office, and I said, "Listen, I've been working here for a long time, and I was thinking about, going for something in accounting or business administration, and I'm a little curious, and I want to see how that goes." And he says, "Well, you know what? You've been with us for so many years, Freddie. You've handled a lot of different projects and programs for us, and it's like, we'll cover the cost if you decide that's something you want to do." And that was it. I just came home one day and I told my wife, I said, I don't want to do social work anymore. I think I want to go into business administration, right? And management. And she looked at me like I was the craziest person on the planet. And I've always had ADD, right? And
Okay.
so, and I've always had like, when she first met me, I bought a laundromat, and well, no, when she met me, I had a DJ business, and I was doing weddings and bar mitzvahs and all that stuff. And then I said, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I went and overnight went and purchased a laundromat, right? And so she knew I was just like this crazy guy that was just like, when I get bored, I look at something and say, wow, that looks easy enough. Let me try that. I'm going to go do that. And it was fine when I was younger, but now at 32, my wife's like, listen, you're crazy. What you're trying to do is you're trying to just basically erase your entire career that you've worked on for the last God knows how many years, and now you want to go into something that you've never done before because you think you might be good at it and because you like it, right? And she's like, you're going to go to school for this. This is going to cost us a lot of money. I said, no, well, you know what? The company's going to pay for it. And I said, and she's like, oh yeah. So now your boss is going to own you because it's like they paid for your school, and now all of a sudden that's it. Now you're going to become the indentured servant for the next 5 years or 6 years, whatever they get you for as a guarantee you're going to stay with the company. I'm like, well, you know what? I've been with the company for long enough. I'm pretty comfortable with everybody. If I'm trapped in that company for the 5 years, so be it. I'll get the experience, and after that, I'll leave if I have to. And yeah, that's it. She wasn't very supportive at first, but then, when I got into it, I remember my first summer in boot camp, at accounting boot camp. It was at Baruch College, the Baruch Zicklin School of Business. They're the ones that accepted my application, and so they said, well, you know what, you have to go to boot camp, accounting. And I went to boot camp, and I have to tell you, like, it was really hard. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, I don't know. I gotta figure out how to do debits and credits, and I gotta figure out EBITDA and like all these different accounting terms that I knew somewhat of it, but I didn't know that they were. Oh, this is there's a you know there's a method to all of this. And by the way, this is something that's been done for like the last 4,000 years. And and you know what I mean. It's like it's one of those sciences that doesn't really evolve, right? It just you either know it or you don't. And so I did the boot camp, and I did really well with the boot camp because I paid attention that summer. And then I start my first class in the fall, and I remember the professor's name was Professor Nochi, who, by the way, I'm still friends with.
Okay.
I still keep in contact. I keep in touch with him. Professor Anochi was the director of the executive MBA program, and he was basically the boss in charge of that program. And we had a cohort, and it was about 48 of us originally. And that first week of school, like we had to do our introduction and stuff. And this guy was, worked at this bank, and this guy was at Lehman Brothers when they were still around. This guy was at Arthur Andersen when they were still around, and so on and so forth, right? Morgan Stanley, all these different companies. And here I am. I'm like, oh yeah, I work in a nonprofit, and they're like, oh okay. And then um, the professor after the class tells me, listen, you want to come to the office? And I said, sure. And so I wonder if I did anything wrong. I'm like, what the hell is this about? I'm the only one being asked to go to and I knew I was the oddball that came up with this ridiculous answer that I work for a nonprofit, and I really don't have any accounting experience or business or finance experience. And I bloated it to the whole entire class, right? Like I'm like, yeah, this is what I am, and I'm going to give it a shot. So he calls me into the office, and he says, look, he says, I don't, I'm going to try and be really blunt with you. I'm going to be really honest here, and I don't want you to get offended, but I feel it's necessary that I tell you now that about what you're getting yourself into. And without any accounting experience, he's like, I understand you aced boot camp, and but that's just literally just to get you to a certain level. You got people in the classroom because this is the executive program. It's accelerated. So you have people in the classroom that understand all the fundamentals and they understand all the key terms. And we got people that are financial analysts, okay, that are in the classroom, and you know we're going to have classroom assignments, and a lot of these assignments there's going to be group assignments, and my concern is that people are going to end up having to carry you, right? And I'm one of those. I'm a professor that like, look, you know what? If one fails, everybody fails, right? But I certainly don't want to fill, people with, the boat, fill the boat with rocks, right?
Mhm.
Before the boat even, is put into the ocean.
Yep.
Right? So he's like, I'm gonna recommend you do not continue the program. I don't think that this is right for you. And I said to him, "What are you telling me, or are you giving me? Are you recommending?" He said, "No, I'm recommending because you know what, you got accepted into the program, and you passed your accounting boot camp with flying colors. Okay, but I'm telling you right now, no one's going to carry you, and you know, people out of the 48 people that you see, half of them are going to be gone by the time this program is over." Okay, because they're just going to be kicked out or they're going to quit because they can't make it, they can't do it, right? And a lot of these people that have full-time jobs, and so they're going to realize they can't cut it and they can't meet the demands and they're going to quit. And he's saying that I'm trying to save you the trouble. And I said, well, I can't quit because I signed an agreement with my boss and they just cut a check to Baruch College for the first year, or at least the first half of the first year as first payment, right? It was actually three payments that were supposed to be made for the first year. And I said, that's roughly around $15,000 or $20,000 at the time, because this is back in 2006. Um, so I'm like, I signed up for this and I'm all in for $85,000, which is the full tuition. If I quit or if I leave, I owe the company whatever they paid in tuition and I got to pay them back right away, right? Because I didn't meet my obligations, right? The company's got to
Right.
pay me back. And I'm like, I just don't have the kind of money to pay them back. So you're stuck with me. And he's like, so you'd rather, you can bail out now for whatever 20,000 or whatever your company made a check out for, or you're gonna risk it, and a year from now when they're 40,000 or 50,000 in, and you get kicked out, okay, that's not gonna be worse for you. And I said, I don't think you understand. I don't think I have the luxury to fail, and because I know I don't have the luxury, I think I'm gonna be okay. So I took it. I said, I'm going to take this very seriously and I go with it. And I knew right away at that moment that I am never to raise my hand and ask for a help or anything because that professor is going to zero in on me. So I just kept I just kept my nose down. I did all the work. Whenever there was group work, okay, I was the first in. If they needed me to lead, um, be the group leader, to be the first presenter, to be whatever it is, I was all in there because I realized at that moment that I cast doubt on not just the professor but probably the rest of the people in that class. I was I was the outlier and I was the guy that probably nobody wanted to work with because everyone at that point was like, oh yeah, we're gonna have to carry this guy. And I think it was after that first semester, it was after the finals for that first semester. Um, Even before then, because I was active and I was volunteering, I would be the first one to go to the board. And I was, answering questions whenever I was called upon to answer the questions. People started to see that I was with it.
Hmm.
And we'd always go to the Harry Monk, which was right up the block from it's not there anymore. They closed down. But that was the old watering hole on Fridays and Saturdays, right after class, and we'd all go there and just to blow off some steam before we went back home to our families. First, when we got to the end of that first semester, and everybody's leaving the class one by one, depending on when they finished their final exam, and everybody was meeting at the Monk, at the Harry Monk, and people were trickling to the Harry Monk. Everybody that you finished it, how did it go, and this and that. So I finished probably half the class had already finished, and then I handed in my paper. I rechecked my work, and I handed it in. I walk out, and I'm like, wow. I'm like, I think I aced it. I think I got this one in the bag. And then I walk into the Harry Monk, and I get this huge, overwhelming reception from my classmates, from my cohort. And they said social worker, and like everyone's giving me high fives, and they're like, "Bro, I never thought you were gonna make it this far, man. I didn't know you were." And everybody at that point that I realized at that point I earned everybody's respect. And they said
That's
everybody's
great.
yeah, and they're like, this guy, I want him in my group because he's not a person we have to carry. If anything, he's gonna help carry, other people in the group. It's also where I learned. It's also where I discovered my public speaking capabilities. When I was in that program, because they just force you every week. You have to get out there and you have to do like some sort of like dissertation about something, and so it just became this regular thing. And I realized when other people were getting choked up, that I was perfectly comfortable in front of the microphone and in front of a huge board doing presentations. So really have a lot to thank not just my classmates but the professors, because they made it really hard for me, and they were constantly reminding you that you think you're hot but you're not. There's always somebody else that's gonna be better than you, that's gonna be faster than you, wiser than you, is gonna make the better decisions than you are. So be on your A game, and we were always on our A game, and I was very much on my A game throughout the entire period I was in school. And during that period, obviously we had the drama going on at work where that's it. The CFO had been by that point pushed out, and then the consultant had moved in and become quite comfortable as a new controller. Um, and now the CEO did not want to pay that controller, that interim controller consultant, because he was way too expensive. Um, so he just basically looked at me. He says, "Well, I paid for your school, and you're graduating, in 6 months. You're going to have your MBA." He's like, "I want you to start taking over as controller for the company." And that's when I started to really look at the books and really look at everything. And with the help of the consultant slash, acting controller, because he was a nice guy. He knew eventually he was going to have to go anyway, so he was really really helpful. And he was like, "Okay, you need to know this, you need to know that. Just be really careful. Your boss has like certain expectations." And we had come to an understanding that pretty quickly. For me, I realized pretty quickly, and there was an understanding between me and the outgoing acting controller, that the boss was running the company on a cash basis, right? When you have to run a country, you have to run the company under an accrual basis, and you understand the whole concept of cash basis versus accrual basis.
Yes.
Yeah. So he, I guess for anyone that's watching, that's going to be watching this, just to give it a quick explanation, if you have X number of dollars, you have $2 million in the bank, and you have $1 million that's going to go on in payroll next week, and you have a bunch of vendors that you have to pay. You're looking at the account and you're saying, "Oh, I have $2 million in the account. Okay, let me hire a contractor because we need to fix the bathrooms. We need to do this. We need to do that." And the CEO would ask for the checks to be cut for the contractor and this and that. And then you start seeing, we would do the accounting and the accruals on and say, "Well, we have these checks outstanding. We have these checks outstanding. We have payroll that's going to be outstanding. Okay. And we have all these other expenses for all these other vendors, right? All these payables. And we have checks that we've already sent out." And he's not seeing what we're seeing. He's looking at the bank statements at the online, and he sees $2 million. But what we see in our books, right, is actually negative $192,000, right? Because you're not, because all that money that you see in the bank right now, that you think you have all this money in the bank to work with today, no, that's already been spoken for. That's already been
Yes.
spent. It's already been expend, right? So what you're doing is cash accounting, and you need to ask your CFO how much money we have. What are our books looking at? Do we have money to do this? Do we have money to do that? And we have to have a budget. Okay, what are our expenses going to be for this year? So then your CFO can kind of figure out, okay, how do I do this? Do I need to create a financing opportunity, right? Borrow? Am I going to do? And if it's something that where this is a small project, are we going to use line of credit, or are we going to see if we can take out a loan, or are we going to do something where we take out a line of equity against the mortgages, right, against the property? So there's different ways to figure out like financing, if it's going to be long term or short term. And you can never understand. You didn't know, because the CEO was just so out there, and he would just go spend. Like, if the checks would come in for $300,000-$400,000, service that we provide, and he'd be like, "Oh, okay, great. we need new vehicles, and then you go out and buy new vehicles. And I'm like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And so we started to butt heads a little bit. This is after now. This is after that I became. He had promoted me to CFO, right? And they thought that it was appropriate because my background wasn't so much accounting, right? Accounting was no longer my background. My background now at this point was finance, right? And so I understood the process, and I actually used the principles of net present value, discounted cash flows, whatever I needed to figure out to see where I'm going to be next year and where I'm going to be the year after that, and what projects we could take on, what projects we can't take on money wise, and what kind of financing options we would need, and basically what the interest what the interest cost would be, to the agency, to the organization. And so, and obviously even with investments, right? Also with investments, I became the go-to person to figure out the best place to park our money. And of course, my love has always been T-bills, because when you're dealing with nonprofit money, you can't be putting money into Wall Street, because Wall Street is it's not a casino. Wall Street is not a casino. I mean, there's definitely you can make predictions, certain predictions, but the problem is that the volatility had gotten so much to the point where the reaction on Wall Street for even the slightest thing that had nothing to do with with the Dow or with the S&P 500, all of a sudden it was just affecting, it would just affect it. And it's just like, and what if we needed to be liquid? And so my thing was just park it in T-bills, and it's the most secure place for to prevent asset erosion, right? Which we all know asset erosion from inflation, because inflation is always the thing that eats away at assets, right? If it's not depreciation. So did that for a while, and um, I'm just going to say that the board of directors and the CEO kind of were just at they were butting heads, and the CEO suffered from this complex called the founder syndrome, right? Because he was the founder of the organization. So founders tend to look at the organization as if it's their own company, and they can do what they want. And the board of directors is just a bunch of people that just get in their way. They have to be there, but I don't really have to listen to them because I'm the founder. Now, in many cases, okay, as was in this case with the CEO for many, many years, the board of directors always give the founders some deference, because they started the organization when there was nothing, and they had to put in their own money before they were able to recover that money to get it started up, and so on and so forth. And so, but it just got to the point where um, the board of directors just really couldn't control the CEO anymore. And like I wasn't really a part of the details involved in it, but as an outside spectator, I could see that as usual. I just keep my head down, do my job. When I have a recommendation and I'm asked your recommendation, I'll give it. But there's like a Game of Thrones things going on over here, and I wasn't going to be really a part of it because I was just going to go down with whatever the drama was. And I
Like
knew,
your head on a stick.
yeah, but I don't want my head on a stick, and quite frankly, I still had like 2 years left or 3 years left on my agreement with the organization, and I didn't want to find myself in a situation where I got fired or laid off or something. I was targeted as part of the cleanup, right, of the
Mm-hmm.
organization, and then all of a sudden I got to pay the organization all this money back because the agreement is, nah, especially because I knew I had an agreement. I said, wow, this would give them real good reason to want to get rid of me right before the agreement, right? As long as they have, but they have to have good cause, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I was one of those guys that just like I was gonna make sure no one had good cause on me. I was just gonna be like on point about everything. And as I think you can probably gather right now, Gage, right now, that's one of those things where like when I'm on point because I know what's at stake. And so just there I remember the day when the CEO just he had left in a rush, in a hurry. And I got the call about a meeting with the board of directors. And I said, "Oh man, this is it, man. They're gonna axe me too, man." I'm like, "That's it. I'm done, man.
Cleaning
I'm so
house.
done." Yeah, I'm like, you know what? I did the best I could. Like, and they're like, "Yeah, you and the COO, okay, you're both gonna co-lead the organization, for the time being, until we find a new CEO." And I'm like, "That's it?" And like, "Yeah, that's it." Like, "All right, cool. Thank you so much." The thing is that at the time, I didn't realize at the time. I thought I was just going to be basically just doing the fiscal side of things, the financial side of things, and that the COO would run the day-to-day operations of things. And the COO really was, um, he found it to be a little more pressure than he was expecting of him because, it was a different dynamic. You're not, okay, so we're co-CEOs, but the previous CEO was kind of like the founder. So that CEO was given like a kinder treatment. We're co-CEOs, but now we are like literally hired by the board of directors. Okay, it's like it's like Darth Vader says, in the first installation of Star Wars, he's like Admiral, right? It's like, oh great, now I'm next. So it's like it was a lot of pressure on us, and we knew that all eyes were on us, and we couldn't make any mistakes. I had to appoint a controller. In the interim, I mentioned controller, which happened to be my assistant, who had a background in accounting, also had a background in social work, but she had already been assisting me with the accounting side when I was a CFO, and so I felt comfortable with her, and I knew that whatever she didn't know, I would teach her. Better than having a person that come in from the outside, that would shake things up. I knew what needed to be fixed, and I knew I could tell her, wait, we need to fix this, and that, and that's it. We're gonna run completely on accruals, and we're not gonna be looking at the bank accounts to find out how much money we have. We're gonna look at only our books, right? Because our books tell us exactly how much money we have, and we're gonna have accurate depreciation schedules, and we're gonna have accurate uh, um, 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 reconciliations, month-to-month reconciliations. We're going to try and keep it as contemporaneous as possible to close off the months. Because if you don't close off the months, then they just kind of stay there, lingering in the GL. So I think it was like 6 months in, the other CEO said, that he couldn't do it, and
Wait, was the other COO, was he the
he was COO.
consultant?
No, no, no. He was the COO, and he was just managing operations for the organization. He
So the
handled the day to
consultant was
day.
gone.
The consultant was gone. Oh, he had already long been gone. That's it. I was
Okay.
CFO. When the consultant was there when I was in school, and as soon as I was done with school, the consultant was, basically the CEO gave him his walking papers, and he said, thank you very much. Fred's going to be the new CFO, but he had given me a lot of tips, and he had given me a lot of. He had mentored me quite a bit
Okay.
on the things that he had noticed, which made it a lot easier for me. But it's kind of like telling me exactly where all the landmines are, and I'm like, well, gee, that's great. And I'm like, so as you know, you give the CEO the bad news, all right? He doesn't like it, and like, but the bad news is not going to change because he made me CFO now, right? It's not like I'm going to go in there and say, oh, everything is like, beautiful roses now, and no,
Hmm.
because you know, I answer to a higher authority, and I went to school, and I was taught a certain way, and if I don't do it that way, it's not being done correctly, and so that's why I always say. That's why I said, like, when I got called to meet with the board of directors, yeah, I was scared, but I said, you know what? At least I know I had integrity. I know that I always kept the book straight, and if they feel that they don't need my services anymore, it's okay. I got, the only thing my biggest concern was I had to pay back, right, that loan, which didn't end up happening because um, I think after the COO stepped down, as co-CEO, shortly thereafter the board of directors, had asked me if I want the job, and I said yeah, absolutely. And because my background was already in programs and services to begin with, and my background was already in social work, right? I understood our mission and I understood, what it is that we get paid to do. Um, but what makes it very, very unique for me, right, or for my organization as opposed to other organizations, is that I also have the finance and accounting background on top of it. So I'm able to look at the mission and I'm able to look at the money and I'm able to see what we can do and what we can't do. And there was a little bit of that charisma too because I had gained this footing. I had made connections when I was doing my rounds with AHRC, doing my rounds as a social worker, doing evaluations in the worst sketchiest neighborhoods, and I made relationships with people and banks and stuff, as I was doing my stuff in as a CFO. And I knew some of the other players and some of the other organizations, and I knew the people at the state level because I've been with the company for so long, and I've been to Albany quite a few times, so I knew who all the players were. I knew who the stakeholders were, and I knew what we needed to do, where we needed, how we needed to get there, and it was just a matter of okay, now I have my space, now I have my runway, and I'm going to take it from here. And I've been doing this since 2013. I've been the CEO. Yeah, that's about it's almost 13 years that I've been CEO. So yeah, it's been a very good wild ride. And we had been through financial crises. We had been through the regional bank meltdowns because of course my organization, we were banking with a regional bank, right? When
Hmm.
Silicon Valley Bank went under, okay, we're like, oh my God, who's next? Oh, it's Signature Bank. Oh wait, we bank at Signature Bank. I remember I'm in Five Towns, coming back from something. I forgot what it was. And with my wife, and I turn on the radio, and it's like Signature Bank, just closed the FDIC just closed their doors, and like just Sunday at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, what the hell? We have money in Signature. That's where all of our money's on. And I remember calling my banker at 8 o'clock that night. She's trying to field calls from all these other clients that she has, and I've known her for years. And I'm like, Judy, you tell me this isn't happening. And she's like, I'm really sorry. It would just happen so quickly, and it has to do with this, and it has to do with that. But we're solvent, or a solvent bank. We're okay. We're fine. And yeah, they eventually got taken over by Flagstar, and Judy still works at Flagstar. And we're doing wonderful with them. But I just remember there I am. I'm so used to dealing with bankers that I just do everything over the phone, right? And or they'll send me something to sign via DocuSign or scan or whatever, sent back for wires or for whatever it is, and all of a sudden there I am at Chase Bank with my CFO, and we're trying to open up a bank account Monday morning over there, and I'm standing in line with a little old lady that's like wants to deposit money for her, for her Christmas fund, right? It
Hmm.
was like the most surreal thing. I'm like, what are we doing here? We're trying to deposit uh $3.5 million right now, um, and open up the account with Chase, and I'm standing in line, you know, with retail customers. But it's something that we had to do, right? Because that's it. We needed to make sure that we shored up the money. We wanted to make sure we had the money in different locations. So because we didn't know what was going to happen with Signature Bank, and I think they suffered a lot because a lot of people just withdrawing money. It's almost like a bank run, right? But
Yeah,
they
it just
guarantee, yeah, but they
feeds on
guaranteed us.
itself.
It was all FDIC guaranteed for as long as we knew until FDIC decided not to guarantee. So everybody was just pulling out their money. And they said, don't pull out your money, don't pull your money. We're going to be fine. We're going to get bought out by Flagstar. But we didn't know if it were going to get bought out by Flagstar and New York Community Bank. We weren't sure, right? So we've been through that. We've been through the pandemic. I just remember the day when um, I remember that last Friday, and we went home, and then all of a sudden, by Monday morning, it was shut down. That's it. Oh, no, wait, it was Monday afternoon. Monday afternoon, it was a shutdown, and that was it. I think it was on the 15th or the 16th, something like that, because my birthday was right around that time. And our doors had to be shut completely. And I'm like, that's it. There's no operations. There's no money coming in. Um, this is when the time when Governor Cuomo said we're going through a New York pause. We're gonna do like this pause and yeah, yeah. And he's talking to you like kind of like right now we're talking. He's like talking about his mom and his brother and this and that and so and um I think right around that time President Trump said we're gonna do the PPP loans and with Small Business Administration with SBA and there I am with Judy, and there I am with one of my accountants on the phone, and at the time, my deputy director, who was able to get on his computer and make whatever necessary, um, send whatever necessary emails that because the bank needed apparently for the SBA loan, they needed to see our certified financial statements, they needed to see our books all the way up until December, interim financials. Uh, they needed to see our payroll. So we had to submit all that stuff because remember the PPP loan is a payroll protection plan program, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is all about covering payroll. So they want to see your certified
Payroll
financial statement.
taxes.
They want to see, yeah, they want to see everything. So they want to see if you're solvent. They want to see you can pay back. They want to see how many employees you have. They want to see what your payroll is. And then they go and they give you 6 months of whatever or 3 months of whatever that's in your payroll, right? That's going to be your loan, right? So I think our payroll at the time was like somewhere in the realm of like $4 million or something like that. So they had calculated that the first PPP loan would be like 1.8, 1.9 million. I'm like, sure, just whatever it is, man, just we need it because I knew that I was given, I knew I had two choices. One, I lay everybody off to stop the bleeding because if I don't lay people off, I got to keep paying people payroll. Payroll is like $300,000 a week, every 2 weeks. Um, or um, or I keep paying people payroll and hope that we're going to open and I'll be able to recover the money. And with the PPP loan, that gave me that hope. That gave me that option because if you accept that PPP loan, you have to use it for payroll,
Yeah.
right? Because basically it's like you're making a promise to the federal government that I'm going to use this for payroll, right? Or at least 80% of it is going to be used for payroll. And if I do that, you're going to forgive the loan because it's being used to prevent people from going on unemployment. Because once they go on unemployment, then it becomes a federal problem. You're going to have like millions of people on unemployment, and that's it. We're basically be a welfare state. So the PPP loans to keep everybody afloat, so that corporations can keep paying people payroll, right? Keep everything going, and then once you reopen, okay, you either pay back whatever you didn't use towards payroll, right? But whatever was used towards payroll, it's forgiven, right? Because once people go on unemployment, it's really hard to get people to find a job again, right? They kind
Okay,
of like,
wait a sec.
yeah,
I have like 4 million questions for you, but
yeah,
um I didn't know they were talking about the fact that the loans were were probably going to be forgiven, but I
yes.
don't think that you knew 100% that those loans were not going to be forgiven. What were you going to do if they were not forgiven?
Oh, the board of directors was really, really clear about this. They wanted me to lay everybody off and preserve capital. I said to them, they said, you have to preserve capital, save the buildings, save everything else. And I told the board of directors, I like, look, we're not in the business of real estate. The buildings are there and we own the buildings and so on and so forth and we need to pay the mortgages and stuff. I said, but at the end of the day, we are a service industry, and in the service industry it's people. We build a state for people to work with people. I
Mm-hmm.
said the building is just a nice place where everybody convenes. I said I have employees that have been working for this company for 10, 15, 20 years, and if I lose them, they go on unemployment, they're not coming back. They're not
Mm-hmm.
coming back. They're going to leave. And I didn't even know at the time that a lot of employees that left companies never came back because they went on and took on remote jobs. and they left their hometown. They went to Texas, they went to California, they went to Joshua Tree, they went to Florida, and they just took on remote jobs, right? And many of them didn't come back. In my situation, since I didn't fire anybody, I didn't lay off anybody. When it came time to reopen, everybody went back to work,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the number of employees that I lost, I did lose some employees. I'm not going to say I didn't. I probably lost about maybe 5% of my workforce, but I didn't lose them because I laid them off. I lost them because they were on payroll and they went in and applied for unemployment anyways, which is that to me is like insane. Like I'm like, wait a minute. We were getting notices from unemployment that these people are applied for unemployment. I'm like, wait a minute, you weren't fired. Okay, you just collected your paycheck last week. You're basically double dipping. So for
Mm-hmm.
those employees, we just like, you're out. That's it. You're done. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to pay you, and right, I'm not gonna. There's no way I'm gonna like. If you tell me, oh yeah, I'm gonna withdraw my unemployment application, I don't believe you. Okay, and then at the end of the day, I'm gonna owe that money, and I'm gonna owe this money. Okay, and I'm gonna lose this money. I'm not gonna have that when I'm trying to hold on to the staff that I can, and I don't even know if any of this money is going to be forgiven, right? Like you said, but my board of directors, they wanted me to lay everybody off, and I said, um, quite frankly, if you lay people off, I can get this PPP loan, and we're not going to qualify for any forgiveness because we're using a PPP loan to pay off our debt, right? And conserve capital, not to pay people their payroll, right? Because they're going into unemployment now, right? So we're not following the rule of this loan. And yeah, you're right. You're right because the federal government, could lie to you, and they could tell you one thing, and then all of a sudden decide they're not going to do it, which they did. They did for when it came for the trying to remember the tax credit that we were all supposed to get, and that was also based off of COVID. But there was some sort of employee retention. It was an employee retention credit. It's an ERC credit. And this was back in 2022, 2023. And they promised that we were going to get a certain amount of credit for employees on their payroll taxes, um, because of money lost during a pandemic, right? And it was called the ERC tax credit and payroll tax credit. And we submitted about, I would say about $400,000 worth. We probably got maybe 300,000, and then all of a sudden, Trump came into office in 2025, and they said they stopped everything. And so, like, I just looked at my account and I said, we're never going to get that money. That's it. It's over. Okay. You got Doge coming in. Everybody's coming in and saying, we're not doing this. We're not doing that. We're not paying it. I said, forget about it. That's it. They're going to renege on everything that was promised to us. That's basically owed to us because it was promised to us, right? Apply for the CRC credit, and you're going to get it because, for the payroll taxes for that period when we were paying employees, and we weren't receiving revenue for it. Um, so it's just a lot of things. And so now I'm in a situation where the board of directors are just like, you know what? Um, if anyone's going to get us through the storm, it's going to be Fred. Because this, it's so beautiful because the way it came together, and I know a lot of it had to do with luck, by the way. Like there was a lot of luck involved here because they could have decided not to forgive, and then I would have because we actually went in for 2 rounds. I forgot to tell you, we went for 2 rounds of PPP loans. Remember, yeah, 1.8 was the first round that we got of PPP loans, and then the second round of PPP loans, I think, was $1.2 million. So we got that also, and all of it was forgiven afterwards. And then I think by July 20th or July 25th, we had reopened our doors because that's it. The New York pause was over, and people started resuming business was rough. We did not we opened our doors and said, okay. And we had all these protocols. We had the PPEs, which of course we submitted to FEMA for PPE reimbursement. Whether it was masks, whether air purification systems, whether it's alcohol, whatever it is, hand sanitizers, whatever it was, anything you can think of, we submitted, we bought and we submit. And then we're telling the parents, we're safe. We are sanitizing our vans every single night. We have these dividers between where the driver is and where the passengers are, and we're doing all this at the programs, and we have air purifiers everywhere, and we just we had like the retinal scans and like the temperature scans that you have. Those kiosks where you walk and then it checks your temperature. Like we had
Yep.
all these things. Please send your child with a developmental disability to our organization, to the program. They're going to be safer here than anywhere else in the world. And it was true. We didn't have any people since we reopened. We didn't have anybody that had contracted COVID that attended our program. We did have one or two staff members that I think contracted COVID, but we didn't have any individuals that contracted. And then the co-quarantine thing was crazy because if somebody had contracted COVID, right, that entire classroom had to be quarantined, right? It was like, you remember, it was just like this crazy, world that
Yep.
we were living in. And so, you know, we dealt with it. Other agencies decided they weren't going to do it. They were going to wait till a lot of these restrictions, were lifted before they reopened. And when it came time for my competition, the competitors for them, when it came time for them to reopen, they couldn't because they didn't have the employees because they tried to hire, they couldn't hire anybody. If you remember during that period where like even Walmart was hiring truck drivers for $100,000, like that's
Yeah.
how bad it was, you know. And I didn't have the workforce problem. My problem was trying to get more individuals to come into the program. But we were able to pay off all of our debt and our expenses were a lot lower because we had a lot less people that were coming to the program. But because we had less people coming, the state had recalculated our budget because our budget is calculated based on how much we spend. So they realized that, oh, you're providing a lot less services, but your expenses are still really, really, really high. So all of a sudden, now our new rate had exploded. Now our new rate was like super, super high. So a lot of great things happened because of something bad, and because we took full opportunity at the time, um, e- expecting maybe naively that at the time that yeah, this is going to happen if we do this. If we do this, this is going to happen. And but yeah, I can't think of it having turned out any better than it did. And because of it, I think the board of directors is, you know, now it's like, well, whatever you think, Fred, what do you think? And I get a lot of that, not pushback, but support,
Yeah.
and it's been that way and it's been that way for years.
Deference.
What was that?
Deference.
Yes, I'm getting that deference now, right? And it's
Yep.
been like that for years. It's not something new. They just, you know, the relationship of them hiring me as an employee because the CEO is the sole employee of the board of directors, and then the CEO goes and hires everybody else. Um, I think it's become much more of a partnership in that sense, which is what you want because the board of directors obviously they're there for the oversight and for the policies, right?
Hmm.
And I'm on the executive side. I'm there for executing the mission, based on how the board of directors wants me to do it, right? And I could do it the way I see fit, but it has to meet whatever their expectations are. And I think that's a great partnership.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. I got 73 questions for you.
Stop it.
First of all,
I was
did
hoping that
you?
this whole thing would answer most of those questions.
No, it only opened up more questions.
Okay, go ahead, shoot. I'll do my best.
So first of all, did you provide services during the shutdown, the COVID shutdown?
The services. So remember, we had suspended services, and it was only for essential services were supposed to be open. So I guess from March up until July, we were completely shut down, and then July we reopened when we went. He lifted the pause.
Okay.
So yeah,
Okay. So the way your business works is you have classrooms for children who have
developmental
developmental
disabilities.
disabilities,
Yeah,
and then the
IDD.
state pays you per child. You bill them
Yeah,
$50 per child per day or something like that.
yeah. So the rate really depends on how you spend the money. And what you do is you submit what this thing called CFR. It's a consolidated fiscal report to the state and the federal government, and they see how you spent your money, and then that's how they decide how much your rate should be the following year or 2 years down the road. And so it really is like if you spend a lot of money on the direct support professionals, you're going to get a lot of that money back. if you're spending a lot of money on transportation, you're going to get 100% of that money back in the rate. It's going to be built into the rate. Management, senior management, you're going to get a certain percentage, right? And they put in this equation called the WEP equation, which is like, they factor in what the industry standard is, what the statewide averages are, and stuff like that. And that's how they conjure up this rate that you get. Now, in answering the original question, what we do is, yes, we have like classrooms, and they're not children, they're adults. But
Okay.
but the thing is that when you have a developmental disability, right, you're basically non-consenting, right? So non-consenting means that you don't really you can't sign contracts, right? Or you could sign contracts, but they can't be enforced. You don't have the It's already been deemed that you don't have the cognitive ability to make decisions on your own, and you need some sort of advocate or a parent or a family member that's going to assist in your environment, right, or your
Hmm.
service environment. So you want to learn how to
Excuse me.
crochet. Oh, bless
Sorry.
you. You want to learn how to crochet. You want to learn how to take the bus or the train, how to use money to go to the bodega and stuff like that. That's what we do. We do things in a very fun way for folks, so they don't feel like they're learning, so they don't feel like they're being lectured or they're being taught. Everything's hands on. So if you need to learn how to handle money, you're going to go to the store with your worker, and you're going to go and you're going to budget, and you're going to buy whatever it is that you need or that you want, and you're going to understand the entire process, exchange of money and stuff. So then when you want to go out with your family, you can do the same thing. um,
Hmm.
if you're and it's all based on what you want, right? It's not me telling you you need to learn this to be independent. It doesn't work that way. Everything's person centered. So the term person centered means you you tell us what it is that you want out of life. What is it that you want to do? Now you're going to have a person that's going to say, I want to be an airline pilot. And I'm going to be like, okay, well, let's think of some of the things, right, that is associated with airlines, right? Let's look at some of the things that are associated with travel, with things like that. Because, what you want to be and what we can do is just two different things, right? And we're certainly not a Make-A-Wish Foundation where we're going to put you in a pilot, cockpit of
Hmm.
an airplane. But for the most part, you don't hear those kind of things. Like, they just basically say, I want to be independent. I want to be able to live one day, in my own apartment with my girlfriend or with my boyfriend. Um, they just want to live the American dream like anybody else, right? They want to have what other people have. They watch TV and they go on social media and they see what other people do, and they're adults, and they're like, why can't I do that? Right? So they'll want to have a dance, right, where they can ask somebody to the dance, and so we'll do a whole thing where they do a whole prom dance, right? They want to do dance routines. Oh, they love dance, especially with TikTok. I mean, a lot of them just love to do the dance routines. That's big. All these are really wonderful things because the thing is that it allows them to show that to have that to express themselves, right? And they're doing it in a very, very social way, with their peers, right, and with their workers, and there's a sense of accomplishment because once they get a routine down, a dance routine down, right, and then they post it onto their TikTok or whatever, now they can say they learned it, at the day program with their friends. Um, it makes them feel like they are living the lives that they see online.
What if
Right.
they don't know what they don't know?
That's
Jackie
the
Gleason had to do the laundry. He threw the dirty clothes in the dryer. So, I mean, it's an
That's the fun
exaggeration,
part, isn't
but
it? That's the
I'm
fun part,
sorry?
isn't it? And the discovery, right?
Yes,
It's in
yes.
the discovery. And so, yeah. So the thing is that we have a cooking class, right? And people want to go and they want to, be able to do what, Bobby Flay does and whatever, whatnot. And so, but what we do is, we'll do maybe instead of putting them in front of an open flame, and, flipping, omelets, we'll have them, maybe do baking, and we'll use the oven instead. And we'll show them how to preset the temperature and show them how to look up the ingredients and how to use the measuring thing. And so, and these things, you're not doing it just one person. You do it like in little small groups of 3 or 4 people. You find other people that have very, very similar goals, and then you use that activity to help them kind of achieve some of those objectives for their goals, right?
Okay.
So we look for we look for the most general thing that we can find that will meet some of these very, very specific goals, because everybody has a very, very specific life plan, right? And when you're providing service to 400 people a day, um, everybody's got a different life plan. Everybody's got a different advocate. Everybody's got a different caseworker, and all these people come and they meet with our staff once every 6 months to go over the life plan, see what they're doing in the pro. And obviously they have a nutritionist, and they have their podiatrist, and they have all these different other things that they have going on in their lives. That's all part of their life plan. So their day program, right? We fill that day program component of that life plan, which is a huge life plan that covers everything under the sun. That a lot of it has nothing to do with us, right? We cover
Okay.
that, and when they need to meet with us, they say, "Well, listen, the goals in this individual's life plans have kind of shifted. Dad's left, and is not with the family anymore. The person, needs therapy, psychotherapy, and some, living under, this new kind of stressful environment because the dad's not around, right? The dynamics in the home have changed. Uh, maybe health conditions have changed for them. And so some of these things cause shifts in their life plans. And we work with them to try and figure out, okay, how can we complement the life plan to make sure that, that they're getting the best side of what it is that they're trying to achieve. Right. And
Okay.
so and sometimes you gotta be really creative.
Do you also have to do fundraising?
We don't do very much fundraising at all, actually, because we're a fee for service. I mean, we're a nonprofit, but in every sense of the word, we're kind of not. We're really just basically a healthcare center, healthcare/education center, because healthcare in the sense that we're regulated and monitored under the auspices of the Department of Health and CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services. Um, and OPWDD and OMH. OMH is the mental health component. That's for people with schizophrenia, people with behavioral health issues that are not IDD. So we have a lot of government oversight, and the way it's structured, we're really not necessarily we're a nonprofit because we have to be a nonprofit in order to provide these services. But with regards to charity, like I always consider charity work as I do this work and this is my mission. We save the whales. Can you please help us so we can save the whales? We need a dinner benefit. We need a golf, thing so that we can,
Hmm.
raise money so we can save the whales, save the beaches, whatever. You can't bill, Medicaid to save whales, right? So, you know what I mean? Medicaid is like you're going to provide a medically necessary service to a person that has entitlements, right? And a person with developmental disability, they have entitlements, right? And their entitlements are they're entitled to Medicaid, they're entitled to Social Security, SSD, right? They're entitled to a few things that other people are not entitled to, or may not be entitled to. For them, it's an entitlement, and the Medicaid money is used for them to go out and do things that help them become self-actualized, right?
So
And
you're
so,
actually you're a subcontractor.
yes, we're a subcontractor of the state and the
Okay.
federal government. We provide the services, and they reimburse us for it. It's like you contracted me to provide all people with hot dogs in Lower Manhattan, and I provide the hot dogs to everybody. And now you pay me. I tell you how many hot dogs I sold, and you pay me the money for it, right?
Got it.
It's like socialism on steroids, right? So and so there's no charity in it because we provided a service. You told us what the fee is that you're going to pay us, and we provided the service for the fee, right? So we're a service provider in and healthcare and education because we are providing an education service, right? And healthcare because it's all through the auspices of the Department of Health and CMS and state Medicaid. So Yeah, and the auditing is vigorous.
Oh yeah.
It's Yeah, we have clinical audits, we have program audits, we have OPWD audits, we have Department of Health audits, we have Attorney General, Medicaid Inspector General audits. You name it, we have limited fiscal review audits where they basically look at our fiscal side to make sure that we're fiscally viable because they don't want to fund an organization that is not being run effectively and efficiently and is wasteful spending, right? So they don't want to walk into a place like, well, our fees are really high because, we gave everybody a free plasma, a free, OLED screen TV every
Hmm.
Christmas, right? Yeah, that's not, they want to make sure the money was, even if we spend a lot of money, it's being spent on necessary needs. Um, Whether it's facility based, whether it's transportation based, whether it's the service based, um, augmented devices that are needed, okay, to facilitate the services. And obviously the biggest one is, payroll. We have the people and we're paying them very well, okay, to provide the services, and they are doing things in a safe way that doesn't, because you have a lot of people with disabilities, and there's a lot of abuse out there, and there's a lot of neglect, and you know, I always say the thing that keeps me up at night is, the fear that one day I'm going to have an individual that's going to just walk out the door when they're supposed to be monitored by us and being receiving services from us, and next thing you know, right, their remains are found somewhere, right? That scares me, right? Because that's someone's child and a family member entrusted that individual with us, right? And you can't bring them back once that happens. So, oh my God, safety is like, I think the most money we spend is on training and safety and training. Risk management's big. Risk management's big. It's huge, right?
So your social workers, you've social workers in your employment, right?
We have social workers in our OMH component, the people that we provide mental health services for, because of the psychology that's required in that. But with the people with developmental disabilities, we're not required to have people with professional degrees. They do have to be well trained and have to be trained to the standards of the state standards. So let's just say I have a DSP, and we refer to them as DSPs. A DSP is a direct support professional. Direct support professional is a person that works with a person that has IDD, and they have to meet their same rigorous standards as any other person in any other organization, okay, that's also a DSP. So, and the state, when they come, they audit you to make sure that they received all their mandatory trainings, right? And they get tested frequently on it. Every single year, they got to get recertified. On top of that, we have our own safety standards that we want our DSPs to follow. Because of it, we pay our DSPs a little more money than they typically get paid elsewhere. We happen to have a much larger, much higher ratio of college graduates who are DSPs than other organizations. A lot of organizations just hire high school graduates. We have those too, but they really serve as a more of a support function to the main direct support professionals that help people with disabilities. The people who actually do the chart work with them, actually do the trainings with them, and then actually go to the meetings with them on their behalf to go over their life plan. Those people are much more highly specialized, so they get paid even quite a bit more money, and they're usually college graduates.
Okay.
So yeah, but that's our structure. That's not necessarily the structure of other day programs.
Executive college program that you went to.
Yes,
So what degree did you achieve with that?
I got the executive master's in business administration. So
Okay.
my sheepskin says master's in business administration. But it was an accelerated executive program. Basically, you have to demonstrate that you have some sort of proficiency or some sort of experience in your field, life experience, right? Having held titles in managerial positions with some background in finance or accounting, right? That made you a decision maker, a key decision maker in the company. You apply to this school, and then you either get accepted into the executive program or you don't get accepted into. Now, the typical MBA program, let's say at Baruch College, is probably around 35 to 40,000 a year, and that's like, I think it's a 2 year program. It's a 2 year program. Um, think it's a 3-year program, might be 3 year. Um, Whereas the executive program, right, and that's full time, by the way, for the MBAs. You're a full time student. For the executive MBA, you're kind of like a part time student, but you're taking all your classes on Fridays and Saturdays because they
Yeah.
understand that you work full time during the week. Like you're working for like um, Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs or whatever. You work there, and they paid for your tuition. So when you come out with your MBA, and it's not just for the exec, they didn't have just the executive MBA program right next door because there was another program next to us. That was a executive master's in finance. So it was the MSF program. Um, and I know that there was another program for accounting, master's in accounting. But it's so funny because, and I don't know if this is true everywhere, but it was true in my when I was in school. So, it was a bit of a pecking order. It was a lot of fun. One of the things that probably shouldn't have been surprising, but I guess back in 2006, um, and also my perception is like Wall Street's like a really, really a male dominated industry back in the early 2000s. I'm not sure how true that was back then, but I was naive enough to think it because I was in nonprofit. So it's like not like I was in Wall Street or anything like that to know what the ratio was. But when I was in the program, I think more than half of the class was female, right? Which surprised me in a good way. I'm like, this is really cool. It's not what you see in Hollywood, right? A lot of these douchebags are women, actually. We make all the money, man. Go over there and count our cash. But it was cool to see that there was a camaraderie, whether you're a man or a woman, right? We all belong to tribes, right? And you're in the
Sure.
finance tribe, you're in the business administration tribe, right? Or you're in the accounting tribe, but you would belong to a tribe and you fought for that tribe. And so I found out, and to this day, I still keep in contact with all my cohort members. We have a WhatsApp thread, and we meet at least once a year. We try to meet once a year, and we always remember everybody's birthday. So
What's the difference between a COO and a CEO?
Um, the CEO is a visionary. CEO is the person that states the direction that they're gonna go. They are the ones that have to drive the message. And it really comes from like it really stems from the for-profit sector, from Wall Street. You want to get investors to buy stock in your company. You have to be the best salesperson in the company, right? You have to believe in the product. You have to get people to buy in to the idea that this is going to be successful and you want to invest in us. And they do this all the time. They do it every time they have to do a quarterly, call in with investors and with analysts. When they do their forecast, what the next quarters are going to look like, even when it's bad news, right? Because you have to be honest, right? You have to be honest if things are going well or things are not going well. That's SEC regulations that you have to like, you're opening up the books, and you have to be realistic because what people want is people want someone who's genuine. So you need to be a little bit of a used car salesman,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to be a little bit of an honest Abe, right? You have to be a little bit spiritual, like a priest, right? And you have to be completely empathetic, okay, to the needs of everyone, right? Because everyone wants your attention. Everyone has the biggest problem. You need to address their problem first.
Mm-hmm.
So, in addition to trying to figure out what our next direction is going to be, okay, I need to make sure that I'm all those in one. Okay, the people may not love their boss, their immediate supervisor, but they don't need to love their CEO either, but they need to feel confident that the company has good leadership, the company has good corporate culture, right? And fosters growth, creativity, and that comes from the top. That comes from the CEO, right? So the CEO is really making stating the vision, right, and stating what okay he wants to see from within the company also because what happens within the company is what's reflected outside the company to the customers, right? The CEO, the COO is the one that has to make it happen. They're the guys
Okay.
they're the guys on literally. It's like you have the 5-star general that's like, at the Pentagon, and they're looking at whatever, and then you have the generals and the admirals that are the field generals and the field admirals that are on the fields, right, in Iran, let's just say, like, on the USS Lincoln and the USS Ford, right? Because they're taking the orders and like, okay, so this is the direction. So the president wants us to go ahead and go in there, just intimidate, no attack. Okay, that's what we do. And so, but what's the mission? You're doing this for your country. You're doing this for love. You're doing this for freedom. You're doing this because we cannot have terrorists. Okay, we can never allow terrorists to have access to nuclear weapons. And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I'm ready to die for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you see, and
Okay.
that's the whole thing. That's the buy-in. So the CEO has to then convey that message to their staff, right? And really is it's a relationship between the CEO and the CEO, because there's certain things that the CEO wants done, but they really can't happen, right? The CEO really is the grounded person that says, well, you know what, that's great that you want that, but that's not realistic, right? There's been plenty of times I say I want to do this, I want to do that. My biggest thing from 2013 to 2019 was digital transformation. I I wanted to I wanted to get rid of paper. We were so paper dependent in 2013. Okay, we were still using fax machines. We were using copy machines. We were using printers. It was just our paper budget was around $1.5 million a year, just paper, because we had a lot of charts. We had a lot of, every single time you do a service, and you had to do a service entry. When you work with a person with disability, you had to put service entry, and all these different service entries. You need those as backup documentation, and then you got to go and bill, Medicaid, and stuff. When they come, they want to see the service documents. They want to see that things were signed off on, and so on and so forth. And so, really, really paper driven. I said, this is crazy. We need to go digital. And we slowly started to go digital. We slowly started automating processes, um, really relying more on software. I think our software budget in 2013 was around $50,000. And that's only because we had Sage as our accounting software. Even ADP was really just calling in payroll right back then. We were
Mm-hmm.
still calling in payroll back then in 2013. Today, our paper budget is around, I'd say, 15,000 a year,
Well,
and
that's great.
I don't even know why it's $15,000 a year, um, and our, and that means that no more toners, no more copy machines you have to pay for, none of that stuff. Literally, a copy machine that we have is a relic. It just sits there for once a week. People, they need to print out stuff for like a presentation or something, or for trainings. Um, but even then, the trainings are done like online, and they're done, everything's on Zoom or online or whatever. Um, our paper budget's down to like 15,000, and I think our software budget, the number of software, I think we have like maybe somewhere in the realm of 20 to 25 different software vendors that we use. It's up there. It's probably like around $500,000, close to maybe $600,000 total, all in. Um, but these softwares are game changers because they just really um, they changed the way we do business at the corporate office. The corporate office, just our accounting department, used to be around 20 people in our accounting department. That's what we used to have. Very, very paper driven. We had 2 people that did payroll. We had 4 billers. Um, and today we HR department had 6 people. Today we have 4 people in HR, and 2 of them are recruiters, right? One of them is handles DATS, where that's basically disciplinary action, tracking tickets. The HR director, um, who basically decides, if we have enough to fire somebody, or if, when it comes to trainings, when it comes to the employee manual, that sort of stuff, dealing with the unemployment attorney. The accounting staff is just 3 people. Payroll is just 1 person. And the reason why all this stuff happened is because, we, by using software, we train staff so they onboard themselves, they put in their own time, They make their own selections every year for, if they want healthcare benefits, what benefits they want, how much they want deducted for their 401k, so on and so forth. We call it 403 because it's nonprofit, but it's the same thing. So all these things are self-onboarded. So staff are trained to use these softwares and they self-serve. So we become a complete self-serve industry for the employees. Um, the charting for individual service notes that are done for the individuals when services are provided to them. This is what we call the billable service documents, right? We do these service documents. That means you provided the service. Now we have authorization to bill for the service. All this stuff is electronic now, and now our medical, our EHR software that handles these things, everything's done contemporaneously, and right away, as soon as the service note is done, it automatically generates a claim, and that claim gets reviewed by our claims department, okay, and gets submitted for billing. So really, a lot of the redundancies and a lot of the people that we have will really reduced down to just a few. Our accounts payable used to be 5 people in accounts payable, and they would be going through like stacks and stacks of invoices and disbursement sheets and all this stuff, receipts left and right, petty cash slips. I said, no, we're doing away with petty cash. We're not doing petty cash. We're not handling cash anymore. Okay, people are getting virtual credit cards. People that constantly buying things for their programs and whatnot, they're going to get virtual credit cards. Everything gets fed right into bills.com. Okay, and same thing with vendors. Okay, they send us an invoice through email. We scan it, we scrub it digitally, and then everything goes out to them net 20, net 30, their invoices via ACH. That's it, right? No paper checks, no. So everything's really, really automated now. So things happen very quickly. So when I told you before, like, oh, we got to reconcile and we got to close months, we do, but the months we're so contemporaneous on our stuff that they're pretty much closed at the end of the month. The only thing we really need to wait for are the credit card statements, right? Just to go up against whatever our receipts and invoices that we have, virtual invoices and receipts, because everything is submitted via email through bills.com. So, but otherwise, I mean, it's really been streamlined a lot. And so our corporate office, what used to be 40 people in the corporate office, right, is down to like 12, 15 total.
So in the old days, when you were paper, my brother is a occupational therapist in Florida.
Yeah.
And he would tell me how important it is that he gets his paperwork done so the bills go to Medicare and Medicaid on time, or they say, too late, not paying.
Yes. There's a term called 90-day lates. 90-day lates, it means that you did not submit your claims by the 90th day. That's it. You're done. You're toast. You'd have to claim a 90-day exemption, right? And in order to get that exemption, it means that you had to have tried to bill before and the Medicaid number wasn't going through for whatever reason. And so, but there was a first bill, right? But if you did not submit your first attempt to bill within the 90 days, that's it. It's gone.
But now that you're all computerized, that challenge doesn't come up.
No, but the challenge always comes up because we always have people whose Medicaid numbers lapse.
Okay.
Right. So, their coverage will lapse, their family made too much money and they have to go through a spend down. But usually those things kind of they take care of themselves. And then once that's done, we go ahead and we submit bill. But we have people that we haven't billed on in years that just keep coming into program because we know their family's not going to do it. And, for them, it would be catastrophic if they didn't come to program. We still keep the documents on them, everything else. We submit all the time to the state and it gets denied, it gets declined and whatever. And that, I guess, is what makes us charitable in that sense. Because,
well, that's nice.
We don't just, we don't stop services like that. I mean, there are situations in which we do, right? But it's more, the exception than the norm.
Okay, so the education and the contract, because I think that you're not the only person who will ever experience this, where a company is willing to pay for your education. Tell me how that education contract and the employment contract How long was it? Did it have to do with how much money they were spending? And then
No, no, it was
the
really, it was,
paying back.
yeah. So it was basically that I was going to stay with the company for 5 years after graduation.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically I would be, yeah, 2013, I would have been the year that I would have been, that I would have left. So it would have been, we're talking about a difference of a few months. Um, but, that was for me, my biggest sticking point to stay around and stick around at least till 2013 because I graduated in 2008.
So the contract, they said, we will pay for your education,
Yeah, that's what it
and then
was.
you owe us 5 years of employment.
Yeah,
Was there a
yeah.
negotiation, or that's what they said, and you said, okay, great, thanks?
No, there was no negotiation. The CEO said, how about this? Because I need to get rid of, that's what it was, because he wanted to get rid of her. And he had this consultant who was going to be way more expensive than she was,
Mm-hmm.
right? To be the controller of the organization, and handle the money and handle the books and stuff. And so he looked at me and said, well, Fred's pretty smart and he's handled other programs and stuff like that. And I see he's been working with this guy and with the previous controller on different projects. And I said to him, I want to go for my MBA. And he said to me, we'll pay for it.
Getting back to the contract, when you were in the executive MBA program, were there other students there who had also been given contracts in
Yes,
exchange?
yes.
Okay. And how did
I'm gonna say I'm gonna say 90% of them. There's
Was yours a normal situation where
Mine was
five
normal.
years in exchange for education? Was that what the other
Yes,
contracts were?
yes. They were all pretty much around the same,
Okay.
which I found to be surprising. I thought that I was like an exception, and it turned
Okay.
out that a lot of these companies were paying.
Banking with Chase at the same time as signature or after
Yes, what happened is
signature?
we kept signature for our transportation um our transportation company because it's a smaller company, so we kept that with Flagstar um, because I didn't want to end the relationship because I knew we were going to eventually go back and Chase is where we kept our operating accounts, most of our money because we knew that's the safest place at the time to make sure because we knew that Chase was extremely was very 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 much liquid. They weren't going to go under anytime soon.
Did you see a difference in your relationship between Signature and Chase? Because
Yes,
Chase is such a big bank and it's like $3 million, big effing
no.
deal.
One thing about I'm going to say about there's a difference between regional banks and big box banks like Chase and Bank of America and Citibank. Um, you get much better service and you get much better um, interest rates and you get much better programs with regional banks. They really, really work hard for your business. And they actually are the experts when it comes to commercial.
Did anybody from the fraternity bring you into this field or help you along in this field?
No, but ironically, somebody from the sorority, a girl from the sorority, because we had a sorority that TEP was very, very close with at Queens College, and that was D Phi E,
Sure.
Delta Phi Epsilon, and the girl's name is Beth, and I still keep in contact with Beth. Um, when I first went to Queens College, I met her and she had told me that she worked at this company in the Bronx. I'm like, up in the Bronx. I'm like, are you from the Bronx? She's like, yeah, I'm from the Bronx. I'm like, you can meet the Queens every day. And she's like, yeah, for school. And she was the one that got me the job at Gateway because that's where she was working. And that's how I ended up at the organization.
Okay.
So that's a connection there.
Where are you going from here? You going to become a consultant one day, or are you going to retire from this business one day?
I set up myself pretty securely. I bought a few homes. So I'm doing the rental thing, and I have a pretty good 401k, 403b. That's very very well funded. I keep funding it. I'm doing the max right now, and obviously when you're over the age of 50, you can do the catch up on top of that. So I'm doing all that stuff. I'm doing the Roth. Um, I don't know. I think I'm gonna stick this out as long as I can. I'll probably retire when I'm either 65 or 70, probably 70. because I really, I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm going to like, sit home and like, and, watch TV and like, scream at the television or go to the gym. You know what I mean? I don't want to be that guy pushing carts at Walmart, saying, I used to run a company. Like, oh yeah, okay, grandpa, here, take this cart. Okay. It's like,
Yeah.
you know, I would like to see myself one day getting a house like in an apartment in Puerto Rico or something, someplace warm, um, and but also being around my grandkids.
So what about so what if somebody says I want to be a CEO in a nonprofit? Is that something that you would recommend to them?
So here's the thing. It's funny because it's the one career move that is not guaranteed to anybody. So if you said, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a plastic surgeon, I want to be an attorney, I want to be a corporate attorney, I want to be a police officer. You can't just say I want to be a CEO, right? CEO is not one of those things where okay, you go to school to become a CEO and now here's a CEO job. It's there's a lot of it's being at the right place at the right time. It's finding the right opportunities. Look, I could have been in a situation where I would have been stuck as a CFO the rest of my life. Um, I could have been in a situation where I decided I don't want to do that anymore, and I would have gone and done something else somewhere else. Um, I did, I did know that when I was a CFO, my plan was to eventually start my own nonprofit organization because I said, man, I could do this, man. I could do it way better than this. Um, but one thing is saying it, and the other thing is doing it. I'm not so sure I would have had the time or the energy to try and do it. I probably would have done it because I'm kind of crazy like that. Because, like I said at the beginning, I mean, I owned a DJ company, and then after that, I went and owned a laundromat, and after that, I did a linen business with day spas. I mean, I was doing like crazy shit, to make ends meet. I was, working with AHRC and seeing patients in the evenings. So I mean, it's possible I would have started, I would have tried to start my own nonprofit. That's not to say I would have been successful at it or would have been, would have had the same success that I had, with this. I mean, yeah, sure. When I landed the job, it was completely paper driven. There was a lot of problems. I didn't have the right staff. They didn't have the right training. They didn't, the risk was out the window. We had so much risk and I needed to, you know, make sure that we addressed all these risk concerns. But it was still a running company. It still had an operating payroll department, had an operating accounting department, had an operating IT department, even though it wasn't much of an IT department, but you know things were already in place. So for me, it was a matter of the runway was already paved. I just had to take flight. Whereas when you try to open up your own organization, there's not even a runway, man. It's just grass. you know,
You better flatten it. Could you have made a living if you had stayed as a CFO?
I mean, I think so. Um, I mean, as a CFO at the time, I was getting paid to run 200,000, I think, at the time back in 2008. It was a very, very good paying job. I didn't complain. It was comfortable, right? I come a long way from making 40,000 a year to 50 to 60 to 70 to 100, 110. And, then I was making back in 20 and 2000 and 2008, 2009, I was making 200,000 back then. I mean, that's pretty good money. I mean, by today's standards, it's really good money. But I have to tell
Right.
you, when I originally took the job as CEO, here's the funny thing: when I originally took the job as CEO, I actually ended up taking a pay cut because, yeah, because at the time I had an insurance policy, and that was being paid by the company as part of my benefits. I had a company car, my gas was paid for, my tolls were paid for. There was a lot of perks that I was getting, and then I was one of the first to say there's a lot of waste going on here. There's a lot of things that we don't need. And I said the first thing I want to do if I take over is I want to clean up a lot of this stuff. And that included getting rid of a lot of these perks and benefits that really were only benefiting the top executives and nobody else, right? So for me, what was most important is making sure that I had better healthcare plans for the employees, better pay, right, which created stronger retention of the employees that we want, not the employees that we don't want. Because you find yourself in a situation that if you don't pay the people the right amount of money and you don't give them the right benefits, your best employees, and you don't provide them with the right training opportunity, the best employees will leave for better jobs, and the worst employees stay because they're unhireable anywhere else. So that's where I say, you know what, we're just going to keep pushing the envelope and pay better, and we're going to get better employees. Then we're going to squeeze out the bad employees because we don't need them anymore. We have replacements for them now. Yeah.
Well, I thank you very, very much for your time. It's been a pleasure
Thank
and
you, Stan. It's a
entertaining.
pleasure here. Pleasure was all mine.
I wish you the best of luck in your future endeavors, and I thank you very much for helping us out with this project.
Thank you so much. And taps the tops. Appreciate it.
Okay, Fred,
Okay.
thank you.
Have
Take
a good
care.
one. Okay, you
Good
too.
night.
Good night.